The late afternoon sun gleamed through the tall windows of the Lafayette, Austin's newest upscale restaurant. Golden light bathed the polished mahogany tables where Alex and Michael Campbell Roberts sat, fingers intertwined in celebration of their 5-year wedding anniversary. These moments were precious victories, small reminders of their 7-year battle for legal recognition in a state that had resisted their love at every turn. "To us," Michael whispered, raising his glass of champagne. His blue eyes sparkled with the same determination that had carried them through courthouse battles and family rejections. 5 years officially recognized. 12 years of loving you without permission. Alex smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. At 36, his sandy blonde hair had just a touch of distinguished gray. "Remember our first date, that little cafe where the owner kept calling you my friend?" Their laughter faded as Ethan, their server, approached for the third time, his gaze deliberately fixed above their heads. Despite the restaurant's recent marketing campaign proclaiming itself Austin's most LGBTQ-friendly dining experience, there was a distinct chill in the service that contrasted with the warmth shown to other patrons. "Excuse me," Alex called politely. "We ordered almost 40 minutes ago." Ethan turned, his smile tightening. "Of course, sir. The kitchen is quite busy tonight." As the words left his mouth, Alex noticed their appetizers, the ones they'd been waiting for, being carried to another table. The couple seated there hadn't even been present when Alex and Michael had arrived. Michael's hand tightened around Alex's as he leaned forward. "I think there's been a mistake. Those are our..." Before he could finish, a heterosexual couple approached their table. "Excuse me," the woman interrupted. "We were told this is our table. The hostess said you'd be finished by now." Alex felt his stomach clench, the familiar feeling of being erased, of being inconvenient. Michael's expression hardened, not with anger, but with the quiet resolve of someone who had faced this moment too many times before. The restaurant around them continued its elegant, hum-soft jazz playing, wine glasses clinking, waitstaff gliding between tables. Yet in that bubble of manufactured perfection, Alex and Michael found themselves once again invisible, their celebration deemed less worthy than others. The contrast was jarring, the restaurant's pride flags and inclusive marketing materials decorating walls that housed the same old prejudices, just dressed in finer cloth. Alex thought back to their wedding day, how they'd stood beneath a canopy of Texas wildflowers, surrounded by friends who had marched alongside them for equality. Their officiant, a retired judge who had once ruled in favor of marriage equality, had pronounced them legally, finally, and joyfully married. That day had felt like a turning point, a promise that spaces would open, that the world would make room for their love. Yet here they were, 5 years later, still fighting for the simple dignity of an anniversary dinner. "What you're experiencing isn't just poor service," Michael said softly to Alex. "It's a reminder that spaces like these still aren't truly ours, no matter what their rainbow marketing claims." In that moment, Alex remembered why they had chosen this restaurant, not just for its acclaimed chef or elegant ambiance, but because they believed in a world where their love deserved the same celebration, the same respect, the same visibility as anyone else's. This anniversary wasn't just about their marriage. It was about continuing to claim their place at the table. This is just the beginning of their story. At Heart Stories, we believe every moment of injustice deserves to be witnessed, and every act of courage deserves to be celebrated. Because in the end, love isn't just about who we choose, it's about refusing to disappear. "We ordered the foie gras and truffle risotto starters over 40 minutes ago," Michael stated, his attorney's precision evident even in this personal confrontation. "I specifically confirmed the order with you, Ethan." The server's face remained impassive. "I don't recall taking your order, sir. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," a woman's voice interjected from the adjacent table. All eyes turned to Jessica, a stylish woman in her 40s with a sleek bob and kind eyes. "I watched this gentleman take their order. They were very specific about the wine pairing too." Ethan's facade cracked slightly. "I serve many tables. It's possible Is there a problem here?" The restaurant manager, James materialized beside them, his tailored suit and practiced smile suggesting years of handling difficult situations. His gaze flitted between Michael and Alex, lingering uncomfortably on their joined hands before they instinctively separated. "Yes, there is," Michael began. "We've been waiting for our appetizers, which were just served to another table. Your server is denying he took our order, but this kind woman just confirmed that he did." James clasped his hands together. "I apologize for any confusion. Perhaps you gentlemen would prefer dining elsewhere tonight. We're extremely busy, and your public displays might be making other guests uncomfortable." The words hung in the air like poison. Alex felt his cheeks flush with humiliation, the same feeling he had experienced at family dinners, when relatives would ask when he would settle down with a nice girl. "Public displays," Michael repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "You mean holding hands because the couple at table 7 has been kissing intermittently since we arrived, and I haven't noticed you asking them to leave." From behind the bar, a young server named Tyler watched the exchange, his discomfort evident. He caught Alex's eye briefly, giving an almost imperceptible shake of his head, a silent acknowledgement of the injustice unfolding. "Your establishment advertises itself as LGBTQ+friendly," Michael continued, taking out his phone and showing James the restaurant's Instagram page. "In fact, you're sponsoring the Pride Business Mixer next month. Was that just for show?" James's smile tightened. "Marketing strategies are complex. We welcome everyone, of course, but some are more welcome than others." Alex finished, years of experience translating these coded messages into their true meaning. Jessica stood up at her table. "I find this behavior absolutely appalling. I'll be sharing this experience with my network at the Austin Business Alliance." James glanced nervously at her, suddenly recognizing a potential PR disaster. "Perhaps we can comp your meal tonight, gentlemen, as an apology for the misunderstanding." "This isn't about a free meal," Michael replied. "This is about dignity, about being treated as equals in a space that claims to welcome us." The restaurant's elegant atmosphere now felt suffocating to Alex. He observed how other diners pretended not to watch while stealing glances at the confrontation. Some looked embarrassed, others curious. A few even nodded slightly in solidarity. The restaurant's pride decorations, tasteful rainbow accents, and a small "All Are Welcome" sign near the host stand now seemed like hollow props in an elaborate performance of inclusivity. Alex thought about all the times they had carefully researched restaurants before dates, reading between the lines of reviews for hints of whether they would truly be welcome. The mental calculation had become second nature. Is this a place where we can be ourselves? Will we need to tone it down? Should we sit in a corner behind the manager? Tyler continued wiping the same glass, clearly listening. His young face registered a mixture of shame and powerlessness. Alex wondered how many others like Tyler worked in environments where they witnessed discrimination, but felt unable to speak up. "We've spent our entire relationship navigating spaces not designed for us," Michael said quietly to James. "We've become experts at reading the subtle signs that tell us when we're merely tolerated rather than welcomed. Your restaurant advertises one reality but delivers another. That's not just poor service, it's deception." The exchange revealed an uncomfortable truth that discrimination often hides behind polite smiles and misunderstandings. That the battle for equality isn't just fought in courtrooms and legislatures, but in everyday moments where people are made to feel less than human simply for existing authentically. "Let's just leave," Alex whispered, his voice tight with familiar resignation. Years of these small indignities had taught him when to retreat, when to preserve his dignity by simply walking away. Michael squeezed his hand under the table. "Remember our wedding vows? No more hiding, no more apologies. We spent 7 years fighting for the right to be recognized. I'm not about to let a prejudiced manager and his biased staff erase us now." His words transported Alex back to the courthouse steps where they'd stood among hundreds of supporters and protesters alike, refusing to be intimidated as they fought for their marriage license. It had never been just about them, It was about everyone who would come after, everyone who deserved to love openly without fear. "You're right," Alex said, straightening his shoulders. Under the table, he noticed Michael discreetly positioning his phone, angling it to record the interaction. When James returned with their hastily prepared meals, the portions were noticeably smaller than those at neighboring tables. The presentation was sloppy, a stark contrast to the artful dishes being served elsewhere. It was discrimination served on fine china, subtle enough to deny, obvious enough to humiliate. "Is something wrong with your meals, gentlemen?" James asked, false concern dripping from his voice. "Everything's wrong with them," Michael replied calmly. "The portions are half the size of what other tables received, and they've been carelessly plated. This isn't what your restaurant advertises on your website." James's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I assure you, all our meals are prepared with the same attention to detail." As he walked away, Tyler, the young server, approached their table with fresh water. While pouring, he whispered, "I've seen this before. He does this to all LGBTQ+ couples. Most just don't come back." His hands trembled slightly. "I wanted to say something, but I need this job." Alex felt a wave of compassion for the young man caught between his ethics and his livelihood. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Tyler," he replied. "I'm sorry about all this." Before they could respond, a woman at a nearby table caught their attention. She'd been observing the situation unfold, her keen eyes missing nothing. She introduced herself as Sarah Jenkins, a journalist for the Austin Chronicle, specializing in civil rights issues. "I came here to review the food," she said quietly, "but I think I found a much more important story. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions later?" The irony wasn't lost on Alex. They had chosen this restaurant because of its glowing reviews and inclusive marketing, a place to celebrate love without controversy. Now they found themselves at the center of exactly what they'd hoped to avoid, another battlefield in the ongoing struggle for equality. The restaurant's elegant chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, creating pools of golden light that should have felt intimate and celebratory. Instead, Wooks felt exposed, as if sitting under a harsh spotlight. The whispers from nearby tables carried fragments of judgment, making a scene. "So why can't they just..." "And not the right place for..." Alex glanced around the restaurant, taking in the other diners, families laughing over shared desserts, business colleagues clinking glasses, couples leaning in for intimate conversations, all enjoying the simple pleasure of a meal without having their right to exist in that space questioned. The contrast made his chest tighten with a familiar ache. Michael reached across the table, taking Alex's hand again, at this time with deliberate purpose. "We deserve to be here," he said, voice steady, "and we deserve to be treated with the same respect as everyone else." Tyler returned to refill their water glasses, this time slipping them a small note with his phone number. "If you need a witness," he murmured, "I've documented other incidents. I've been saving them, waiting for the right moment." In that instant, what had begun as a personal humiliation transformed into something larger, an opportunity to challenge the quiet discrimination that persists even in supposedly progressive spaces. Their anniversary dinner had become a test case, a moment of truth that would force this establishment to confront its hypocrisy. This was the paradox of progress. Sometimes the most important battles for equality happen not on grand political stages, but in everyday moments where people refuse to accept being treated as less than equal, where small acts of courage challenge the comfortable prejudice that lurks beneath polite society. James circled back to their table, his practiced smile replaced with thinly veiled hostility. "I couldn't help but notice you recording our conversation," he said, eyeing Michael's phone. "I'm afraid that's against our privacy policy." Before Michael could respond, James reached across the table and deliberately knocked into Michael's phone, sending it clattering to the floor. "Oh, how clumsy of me," he said, bending to retrieve it. When he stood, the screen displayed a spiderweb of cracks. "That was intentional," Alex said, no longer willing to pretend. The restaurant had fallen quiet, other diners now openly watching the confrontation. That's quite an accusation, James replied. Perhaps you're being oversensitive. Now, about the bill, we haven't finished eating, Michael interrupted. I think you have, James countered. And since you seem dissatisfied with our service, perhaps it's best if you leave now, unless you'd prefer I call security or the police for disturbing our other guest. The threat hung in the air, laden with centuries of unequal justice. For many in their community, police involvement carried risks that straight couples would never have to consider. James knew this. His smirk confirmed it. Michael stood slowly, his 6-foot frame commanding attention without aggression. Actually, I think calling the police is an excellent idea. I'd appreciate their documentation of what's happened here tonight. James faltered, clearly not expecting this response. There's no need to escalate. I'm Michael Campbell Roberts, Federal Prosecutor for the Western District of Texas, Michael said evenly. I'm currently leading a task force on public accommodation discrimination cases, and you've just provided me with an excellent case study. The color drained from James's face. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Alex interjected, standing beside his husband. That's the point. You shouldn't need to know someone's profession to treat them with basic dignity. And I have everything recorded, Alex continued, revealing his own phone had been capturing the entire exchange. I've already uploaded it to the ACLU's secure server. My firm handles their media relations. Sarah, the journalist, approached. James Whitaker, isn't it Sarah Jenkins? Austin Chronicle. I'd love to get your comment on the restaurant's discriminatory practices for my feature. I've been documenting similar incidents across supposedly progressive establishments in Texas. James looked trapped, his gaze darting between the growing number of witnesses. What had begun as a simple act of prejudice, the kind he'd likely enacted countless times without consequence, had transformed into a potential legal and public relations catastrophe. The restaurant's elegant atmosphere had completely shattered. The soft jazz that had provided ambient background music now seemed discordant against the tension filling the room. Other diners had stopped pretending not to watch and were now openly staring, some recording on their phones, others whispering urgently to their companions. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically. Alex thought about all the people who had faced similar discrimination without the protective armor of professional credentials, without witnesses, without recording devices. People who had simply absorbed the pain of exclusion and walked away, their stories untold, their dignity compromised. How many meals had been ruined? How many celebrations tainted? How many spaces made unwelcoming? Tyler had emerged from behind the bar, standing with his apron still tied around his waist. His presence beside them was its own quiet act of courage. I can verify that this isn't an isolated incident, he said, his voice gaining strength with each word. The management has a pattern of discriminatory behavior toward LGBTQ+ guests. From another table, Jessica stood up. I'm happy to provide a statement about what I witnessed tonight as well. 2 other diners from separate tables nodded in agreement, offering their contact information to Sarah. James's face had lost all its practiced charm, revealing the panicked calculation beneath. He tried one more tactic. This is all a misunderstanding. Our restaurant welcomes all guests. Perhaps tonight was an off night for our service. An off night that specifically targeted us, Michael replied. With witnesses confirming a pattern of behavior, that's not a misunderstanding, that's discrimination. Alex watched the realization dawn on James's face that his actions, likely repeated countless times without consequence, had finally caught up with him, that the quiet discrimination he had practiced behind the shield of plausible deniability was now exposed to the light. The confrontation illuminated a painful truth that equality on paper doesn't automatically translate to equality in lived experience. That despite laws prohibiting discrimination, marginalized people still face countless moments where they must choose between accepting mistreatment or standing up at personal cost. That sometimes justice requires not just laws, but courageous individuals willing to hold power accountable, even on what should have been just a celebratory dinner. 1 month later, Alex and Michael stood hand in hand outside the Lafayette as workers installed a new sign. The restaurant's ownership had changed, with the parent company issuing a public apology after Sarah's expose in the Austin Chronicle went viral. James had been terminated, and Tyler, the server, who had whispered his support, had been promoted to assistant manager as part of the establishment's recommitment to genuine inclusivity. "I never expected this outcome," Alex admitted, watching the transformation. "I thought we'd just file a complaint and it would disappear into bureaucratic limbo." Michael squeezed his hand. "Sometimes it takes one moment of refusing to be erased to create lasting change." The new owners had gone beyond performative allyship. They had committed to regular diversity training for all staff, established clear anti-discrimination policies with actual enforcement mechanisms, and pledged to donate a percentage of profits to the Human Rights Campaign. Most significantly, they had agreed to Michael's proposal to create paid internship positions specifically for LGBTQ+ youth facing employment discrimination. Tyler approached them, his posture more confident than the night they'd met. "The first training session was yesterday," he shared. "You should have seen how many staff members admitted they'd witnessed discrimination but never knew how to address it. People are actually talking about these issues now instead of pretending they don't exist." Sarah joined them, notebook in hand. "My editor wants a follow-up piece on how this case is influencing other businesses in Austin. Several restaurants have proactively reached out to update their training and policies, afraid they might be next in the spotlight." The ripple effects extended beyond Austin. A state legislator had contacted Michael about strengthening Texas anti-discrimination laws, using this case as evidence that the current system failed to protect citizens adequately. What had begun as a ruined anniversary dinner had catalyzed meaningful community change. As they prepared to enter the restaurant, invited back for a VIP preview of the reopening, Michael paused. "You know what I'm most proud of? That we didn't just accept being treated as less than, that we remembered our worth." Alex smiled, thinking of all the couples who would now dine here without facing the humiliation they had endured. It wasn't just about us. It never was. The transformation wasn't just physical new signage, refreshed decor, staff wearing subtle rainbow pins but atmospheric. Walking through the doors, Alex could sense a genuine warmth that had been absent before. Employees made eye contact, smiled authentically, and treated every guest with equal attention and respect. The maitre d' greeted them by name, guiding them to the best table in the house, the one by the window they had originally requested on their anniversary. A handwritten note from the new management awaited them. "Thank you for helping us become the truly inclusive establishment we aspired to be." What struck Alex most was the diversity of the clientele. Same-sex couples dined openly, transgender guests were addressed with proper pronouns, and families of all configurations were welcomed with equal enthusiasm. The restaurant had become what its marketing had always claimed: a space where everyone could celebrate life's special moments without fear of judgment or exclusion. Later that evening, as they enjoyed a perfectly prepared meal, Tyler stopped by their table with a special dessert. "The chef made this especially for you, Wim," he said proudly. "And I wanted to thank you personally. Because of you, I finally found the courage to come out at work. I don't have to hide anymore." Alex felt his eyes grow misty. "How has it been?" "Transformative," Tyler replied. "And not just for me. 3 other staff members have since come out too. It's like we can finally breathe." Their story represented something powerful: that equality isn't granted from above, but claimed by those brave enough to stand in their truth. That lasting change often begins with individual acts of courage. That sometimes refusing to be invisible is the most important statement one can make. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination in spaces that claim to be welcoming? How did you respond? Your story matters more than you know. It could be the spark that inspires others to stand in their truth. Share your experience in the comments and follow Heart Stories for more real accounts of courage that changes communities.